Welcome to the Simply His Coffee Shop. Today I am joined in studio with Kendra Hann, Jamie Woodle, and Joe Horn. They are here to tell us about some of their health journeys and why it's so important to be your own health advocate and what Return to Eden is and how they got so passionate about health. Most of you that have watched the show before, we've actually had Joe on and we've talked about his health journey, but with the relaunch of Return to Eden, we thought it would be fun to have you girls come on and tell your testimonies of why you got into health and why that is so important to you and how passionate you are about that. Jamie, let's go ahead and start with you and how you got into all of this.
Well, I think throughout my life, I've gone through phases where I've been more interested in health and then kind of just don't care for a while.
Sure.
And I think that's a pretty relatable story for most of the population, right? Right after New Year's, maybe we care a little bit more. Well, I did a lot of yo-yo dieting, and I did 6 years in the military, and I stayed fairly fit and healthy during that time. After that, and after my second child, some of the yo-yo dieting kind of left me rebounding, and I got up to over 200 pounds. And at this point, I was working, and my husband's in the military, so he's gone a lot. So a lot of times I'm single mom, and just during the week or what have you. And we were doing a lot of Stouffer's meals, a lot of processed food, a lot of things that weren't healthy. And it was just kind of, I'm so exhausted.
Right.
And really looking back at that higher weight for my frame, I'm only 5'4". So this was significant for my body. And I was so tired all the time.
Sure.
And so it was just whatever I could do to get food on the table so I can go sit down or lay down and relax. Well, there was one day, and it was really tragic. Actually, we were celebrating my husband's birthday, and we had gone out to like sushi and hibachi dinner, and we had chocolate cake, which is my husband's favorite. And we unfortunately also had to tell the children that it was Jonathan's turn to deploy and that he would have to leave. And so we had that conversation with our kids, and there were tears. But shortly after that, I was putting my daughter's science project out in the van, and we lived in South Carolina. And apparently I hadn't noticed that while I was leaning into the van, I had one foot on the ground that was on a fire ant hill. And I suddenly noticed I was being bit by all these fire ants. And I didn't think much of it. I often got bit by fire ants. It's not uncommon in the South. They're in your yard.
Right. They're everywhere.
Baseball fields everywhere. And so I didn't think much of it, brushed them off, closed the van, went back inside. And by the time I made it back to my kitchen, my heart was racing. This heat was going up my body. And I knew something was wrong. I briefly tried to look for some Benadryl or something, and I realized that this was getting too worse. I couldn't even concentrate to do that. So I instantly went upstairs and sat on the bed, and I told my husband, something is wrong. I need the Benadryl. And so he raced downstairs to go find it, and the kids left to go help him. And I realized something happened where it changed from I am scared to I'm dying. And so I crawled to the bathroom, and at this point I had just made it where my body was evacuating substance from both sides, both ends. It was awful, and I couldn't open my eyes. And I just felt this overwhelming sense of doom, which if anybody, I didn't know exactly that this is what it was, but if anyone has experienced anaphylactic shock, you have this sense of doom, like your body is shutting down.
Wow.
And so one of the kids came up, and I was like, tell Dad to call an ambulance. And when the paramedics got there, they kept telling me to open my eyes, and I was like, I can't. So eventually they stood me up, and I went unconscious. What felt like woke up in this place, in a position almost like I'm crouching down and peering through the tops of wheat, blowing, swaying in the wind, gentle breeze, I guess. And I'm peering through, and I can see maybe 15, 20 feet away. I see the profile of Jesus standing in this beautiful white robe. And just to what would be my left of him is somebody with dark brown hair, longer, kneeling down in a warrior position where they have one knee on the ground, the other leg is kind of up, but their fist is on the ground. It's really hard to describe it without showing, but almost like a warrior pose, kneeling before the king. And I could see Jesus was saying something to this person, whispering. And after a moment, I realized that that's me. He was talking to me, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. And I was trying so hard to listen. And then just like that, I was brought back. And I still couldn't open my eyes, but I started to hear the voices of the paramedics around me. And I was like, I was talking to somebody. And the paramedic said, that's me. And I said, no, not you. And it took quite a while. I almost suffered from depression because I realized I didn't want to be brought back. I have a wonderful marriage and a wonderful life and beautiful children. But after experiencing that, being in this beautiful place where the colors are almost shimmering with life and there's no burden. You don't even realize that the need to breathe is a burden that we're so accustomed to. But in this place, there was no need to do anything, to be anything, to feel anything. It was just peace. And I wanted to go back so bad that it took a long time. So it was traumatic in a lot of ways. But through that experience and realizing I need to get healthy, and then my husband also getting orders to Utah, and just watching all the pieces fall together, my whole family, we look back at this and we're like, we are in the place we are meant to be. When God works something out, he works it out to the detail, moves mountains that you never thought could have been moved.
Yeah.
And here we are.
I remember talking to you years ago, trying to kind of work on, I wonder if you'd ever move to Missouri and be a part of my team. But you had these very real obstacles, and it did not seem likely at all until one day you started texting. There was hope, and now you're here.
Yeah. But anyway, after that huge wake-up call, I realized I'm clearly inflamed. Something is going on. My body is not healthy. I need to fix this and get things right. And a beautiful story that we won't go into today. My husband ended up not deploying. We moved to Utah, and that's when I really started taking control of my health. I ordered Time Bomb, and I started reading that. And I have known you guys for at least 20 years, 20-something years. And so I got a hold of Joe, and I told him what was going on. And, Joe, I read your book, and what should I do? And he really helped coach me. And during this time, I was already doing a bachelor's degree in human services, setting me up to do counseling or social work. But through the next couple of years, I realized that I am more passionate about health. I'm learning all these things that the general public doesn't know. They ought to know. Someone's got to help tell them and spread the word. And so when I finished my bachelor's, I went to change my plan from progressing into counseling or social work into health science.
Okay.
I wanted to educate people on this. And so just over time, Joe and I would talk every once in a while, and talk about how great it would be if I ever came out this way and ever worked for Eden's. Or
it was all part of my scheme to wear you down and get you to move to Missouri, be a part of the team.
But God really worked it out. When I recall the details that went into how my family came out here. I mean, my husband's military. You can't just pick up and move.
Right.
And he ended up getting orders nearby. So it was definitely an act of God. But I see now, I'm 41, and I just now feel like I'm coming into God's calling for my life of helping spread this information so people can advocate for themselves, so they can have their eyes opened. And this is perfect timing after the pandemic. And everybody realizing, maybe there are other ways. Maybe we are getting wool pulled over our eyes.
Right.
God's timing is beautiful. And I'm so happy to be here and to share in this passion of health and educating others.
And now your education includes, for people that don't know, your pedigree.
I am an integrative nutrition health coach and a Master of Science in Health Education.
So, that helps a ton when you're researching, being able to kind of navigate through what might be propaganda pieces versus actual science.
So my master's degree really overall taught me how to analyze the science, how to realize what is weak science, what is stronger science, so what is evidence-based science and information. And I was able to use that to find information to apply to my own health. And then the educate part is obviously taking this information that I have found and learned about and how to share that with others.
And it really comes out on the Return to Eden program. For those that don't know, they do a weekly program. You and Kendra co-chair the Return to Eden program that exists to help people see outside of the usual information spread that we get here in Western civilization in particular and present alternative ways, really a return to what is our original medicine before pharmaceutical companies came and hybridized it so that they could patent it. But
well, and one of the things I really value about you, Jamie, as someone who is able to take a multitude of incredibly sciencey, dry research that I would struggle with normally, and you convey that information to me with such a level of passion and genuine interest that it's infectious. It's something that it's easier for me to hold on to that information and then enact it into my life because you care about it, not just intellectually, but emotionally too. And that's something that I think definitely comes through on the show. And so we always encourage viewers to let us know if there's a specific topic.
Right.
Because if anybody can find the real good science and research, it's definitely you.
Oh, thanks.
Well, that's an important piece to have people that you can trust and rely on that are going to say, okay, here's all of the science behind everything that's with whatever the subject matter is, and say, okay, let's break it down. This is the big scientific words for it, but basically what this means is
I love nutshells.
this.
Yes,
I
exactly.
know.
And most people do.
Well, most
When I'm
people
talking to
don't have
people,
time.
it's just no, literally, you know this, Jamie.
Yes.
It's just yeah. What do I take?
Yeah. Just
If
give
it
me the
works, I'll
answer.
let you know. But I
Give me the
just
finish line.
they don't even want to know the details. Like you take for granted that they would want to be inquisitive how their body works.
Yeah.
But
Well,
most
because
people are
that's
just
what
run
you
over
do.
by autoimmunity
Right.
or whatever. They just want to know, what do I take?
Yeah. So, Kendra, let's hear what your story is on how you got into health and why you're so passionate about it now.
So I have always had an interest in how our bodies work, and definitely in helping people. That's one thing that I always knew that I wanted to do.
Right.
I spent the better part of my life as an atheist who was, I don't want to say militant necessarily, but I had very strong views against Christianity and God's power in our lives, and control was a big thing for me in that time period. And I met the love of my life later than I would have expected, I guess. And we, met and fell in love. And he had a deep passion for health topics and would really dive into specifically with nutrition and trying to adjust things to help with some mental health concerns that he had and some physiological issues.
Right.
Unfortunately, my husband did pass away, which obviously is a really traumatic thing for anyone to go through, but particularly my young children. And so that really showed me a lot about how I don't have control of everything in my life. And in those darkest moments, I really connected with my husband's family. My mother-in-law really needed to go to church. I was an atheist. I did not want to go. But I know that she needed to, and I needed to be with her. And so we went to church not very long after he passed away, and the pastor did an altar call. And for the first time in my life, I genuinely felt pulled. And so I accepted Christ as my Savior that day. And since that choice, it's kind of like you said, like when God fixes things or works them out, he works them out all the way. And so since I made that choice to give my life to God, everything fell into place. I was able to move mountains and move into the home that my husband had wanted us to raise our children in the town that he knew and was right about being the best for us and for the children. They're thriving. I found this job, and that really gave me an opportunity like I'd never had to dive into that nutritional research, to really look into health and holistic healthcare and what we can do for our bodies naturally. So my passion is more related to mental health.
Sure.
Obviously, because of some of the things that we have gone through.
Of course.
And I very much enjoy having a job that always challenges me, but also leaves me open to follow my own passions, my own avenues. So having the Return to Eden program is kind of the perfect excuse to, first of all, hang out with my best friend.
Yes.
And second of all, really educate myself in topics that I wish I could go back and talk to Kendra 4 years ago and lead her in these directions. And so I guess that's what I really hope to do with Return to Eden is give other women, other leaders in their family the power to understand how our bodies are truly impacted and what we can do to get off the pilly go round, as my husband referred to it.
That's good, the pilly go round.
When it comes to mental health concerns. These things are not character deficits. Oftentimes they're tied to chronic inflammation or chronic pain or gut health and your gut biome. And
Absolutely.
So Eden's Essentials really feels like exactly where I was always going to be. It just kind of took a roundabout way to get here.
I think both of us mentioned how God really puts everything together down to the detail for his purpose.
The most minute thing.
You know, we really hit it off. I mean, she was a mess. Because she was still grieving. But, you know, I think we really bonded through that. I had the opportunity to listen to your story and get to know you and be there for you. And then on my rough days, you're there for me. And we instantly clicked.
So, you know, I would be remiss if I didn't let the audience watching this program know that, of course, you're talking about my cousin.
Yes.
And I would not know you were it not for you falling in love with him.
Yeah.
And
actually, we didn't know each other very well at all. I mean, I knew of you.
I just had only heard of you through people that knew him. But he was like a meteor hitting the earth, getting to meet him and to know him.
Yeah.
He was one of those personalities that would love you all the way, as Kendra says, you know. He was known as the boy who rescues things. He had squirrels that he had nurtured back to health, and he would find a bird out in the yard and he would hand feed, and like he just, there is no describing to somebody that didn't know him what he was like, right? But I grew up with him, you know, for 30 years off and on, as we would live in different states at times, but mostly keep in touch and then always come back together. And some of my most epic memories from childhood is with Greg. So I can say, in point of fact, what I knew of you when you knew Greg and what happened when Jesus got a hold of your life.
Yeah.
This transformation that she's describing sounds very quick and superficial on a platform like this, but it is profound and it is deep. When you talk about having issues with God because of the element of control.
Yes.
I'll put it in Joe Horn phraseology, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea that you'd have to submit to a creator just irritated you.
Right.
But that stemmed out of a lot of dysfunction.
Exactly.
From bad relationships with people that held that role in your life as the controller or the abuser or whatever.
Well, and my tendency to have to be the one that was in control. Like if we're going to eat today, it's going to be because I made that happen. If the lights are going to be on, it's going to be because I worked extra hours and I did that. And that almost compulsive need to rely on myself made me, I don't want to say petulant, that sounds really negative, but it's petulance probably the closest. It's not, looking back on it now, I can see that it's never that I didn't believe that God was there. It's that I was angry. I didn't like
time surrendering.
how God handled things. And submission, yes, submission was something I struggled with tremendously, but also, you know, falling in love with a man like Gregory helped in that way, because he had a tendency, not in a mean way or anything, but he was so big with his passions and the way he would devote himself to things that it's almost like you're along for the ride whether you like it or not. It's like a whirlpool. So it's jump on board or you're getting drug along behind. And one thing that I think of a lot is I love Thanksgiving. It's like my favorite thing, and I have adapted my recipes since I was probably 16. And one year he decided sugar is toxic for one thing, and nothing processed. And so I had to adapt every single recipe that I have done since I was 16 years old for Thanksgiving to fit into his dietary parameters. And what a learning experience that was. And so, yeah, he it's like he could take the smallest beautiful thing about someone and shine such a light on it that you wanted to make it bigger. You wanted to focus on that thing and really cultivate it. So
is he responsible for the dinner rolls that you make and send my way?
you're responsible for the dinner rolls that I make, Joe.
I didn't know if that may be the genesis of the dinner roll. So she'll make these bags of dinner rolls, and I always get depressed when we get down to the last bag because I'll get like a good 6-week supply.
Yeah.
And he'll like put them in the air fryer.
And I get jealous, don't I?
Yes.
I get a little.
Anybody touch them?
I get a little. I'm willing to share, but if I don't think the person's appreciating, that's the last dinner roll.
I hear about it.
If you're just going to waste a roll, go eat something with gluten.
Right.
But if you understand this experience,
Right.
I'm open to sharing, right?
I relate. She's responsible. We just filmed a cooking show kind of revolving around Thanksgiving and recipes. And the stuffing recipe that we did was inspired by Greg.
Yeah, it was actually, he found the recipe and then I lost it.
Oh, no.
And so I could not find the recipe anywhere. And just, I think it was in the middle of the night, I sent you a message on something and I was like, oh my gosh, I found it. And then that was what we ended up centering the episode around, which unfortunately I was not in that episode specifically, but I'm looking forward to seeing it.
It is delicious.
It is a delicious stuffing and really good for you too. So check that out if you haven't seen that program. I think we're a really good team and this is definitely something that feels right.
God ordained.
Yes, exactly. To be able to go into a job and not just do your job, punch your clock and leave, but actually have thought-provoking conversation and have this really deep passion for something that is going to filter through our families for generations and hopefully yours too.
Well, you guys are
ripples of
already
change.
changing lives. I mean, the people that you've already talked with, the content you're putting out on Return to Eden, encouraging people to be their own health advocates.
Yeah.
You're already changing lives. And the longer you do it, the more it'll start catching up with you in the best of ways. You'll start seeing some of these people at conferences. You'll start seeing the emails coming in. I took your suggestion and I reversed my type 2 diabetes or whatever the case might be. It's just a side effect of being an advocate for natural health, pointing people at God's herbs and trying to get them away from pharmaceuticals.
Well, and being obedient to those callings that we have on our lives, which again, obedience was not past Kendra's favorite word, but being obedient to your calling, making sure that you're focusing on the right things and going to the right people who can help you if you maybe take a couple steps off that path and need some redirecting is incredibly valuable.
Health and
I noticed
spiritual.
that Jamie looked at me when she said mentors. Do I get to take some credit?
I think so.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you, Jamie.
Get you a little note card.
Thank you for that endorsement. Even though I contrived it a little bit, I'll take it.
Oh, you did though. When I called you and I said I read Time Bomb and just over the subsequent few years there while I was really focused on my health, you absolutely coached me into getting healthy and losing weight and addressing inflammation. And I mean, I was a mess. And this was, 6 months after the anaphylactic episode where I was still dropping glasses and couldn't sleep. Wow. I'd go to fall asleep and I'd almost fall asleep and have that feeling where you're falling off a building, and you jerk awake. But I never fell asleep. It was just the jerking. And so when I started addressing these things and getting that inflammation removed from my body, all those problems went away. All the neurological things resolved. I was able to sleep very well. So it's important.
And I know you've worked hard. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, wow, it was so easy. She just did a couple of things.
It's a
she
constant
worked
battle.
and worked and worked and followed instincts and tried protocols and swapped certain things and a lot
Really
of self-experimentation
listened to her
with what supplements and
Oh gosh, I remember talking to Catherine and asking her for recipes for bone broth and and even advice on trying to get your kids to jump on the wagon. And
it does end up becoming a whole family process, because it kind of has to be.
Yeah.
Because as busy moms and stuff, you don't have time to make 5 different meals for different people
and you don't want
in
to
your
create
family.
these problems that you've had in your children either. And as mothers, it's our job to direct our children and lead them. And so having really well-educated, powerful women in our lives and men too.
I guess
there's one of us up here today. One.
who can lead without making you feel small. That's something that
Yeah.
I really appreciate about this team is that, if I don't know something, I never feel stupid going to one of you and saying, hey, can you explain this
Sure.
to me? And that is incredibly valuable. So if you have a question or a concern or something that you're going through, call us. We're here. We want to have those conversations.
Yeah.
We want to
Right.
address these issues together and move forward in a really cohesive and healthy way.
Well, and that's part of why Joe had wanted to start the Return to Eden show as well as the whole supplement line was because we didn't have that when we were starting out
Yeah.
because having those resources is so important to help you get through because again it can be so overwhelming
Yeah.
that if you just take the baby steps that's the best way to do it because again there's so much information out there. You can Google things and find 5 different things that say 5 completely different things.
Yeah.
Which one is correct?
If you want to watch Return to Eden, one of the easiest ways to do it is you can go to anywhere where you watch social media. You know, it's on all the platforms, YouTube, Rumble. But if you want to simplify life and follow Skywatch Television, Simply His Coffee Shop, Return to Eden, the Donna Howell program, you can literally go to the App Store and for free download the Skywatch TV mobile app. And you'll see right at your fingertips, it's all of the programs organized in very easy push-of-the-button access to the show. And then it'll open up the most recent episode for that week.
I really like that you can access all of the archived programs through the app too. That's something that I talk to customers about on the phone when they first discover any of the shows and want to know where to go. I definitely suggest starting at the beginning with those archives that are available in the Skywatch TV app.
So watch Return to Eden. It's a great, great program. So much information. The girls do an amazing job with it. And they will be back next week to talk more about Return to Eden. So you will not want to miss that. Join us next week in the Simply His Coffee Shop.